What happens when you stare into the eyes of Chicago's most feared predator and refuse to blink? For Nia Caldwell, one moment of raw defiance against Ren Takahiro, the cold-blooded head of the Japanese Mafia, should have been her last. She wasn't supposed to walk away from his table alive, but instead of her funeral, she became his fixation. Nia never imagined her exhausting double shifts at the Ren would collide with Ren Takahiro's world, a world where silence means survival and fear is currency. To stand against him meant inviting death. To submit meant losing herself. But what happens when a man built on terror meets a woman who refuses to be afraid? An obsession becomes more dangerous than vengeance. Before we continue this story to see what happens next, please like and subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us bring these stories to life. The Thursday night crowd filled the Ren with a symphony of clinking glasses, low jazz, and the kind of laughter that came easy with expensive wine. The restaurant glowed amber under Edison bulbs, casting warm shadows across exposed brick walls and marble tables. The air carried the rich aroma of seared ribeye, truffle risotto, and the sharp bite of aged whiskey, scents that usually meant Chicago's elite were spending money they'd never miss. Nia Caldwell moved between tables with practiced efficiency, balancing a tray of drinks while her mind calculated tips and rent and whether she'd make it home before midnight. At 26, she'd learned to wear exhaustion like a second skin. Her natural hair was pulled into a neat bun, a few coils escaping to frame her brown face, and her black uniform somehow still looked crisp despite the 8-hour shift already behind her. She wasn't just a waitress here. She was invisible labor, the kind of person wealthy patrons looked through rather than at. "Table 7 needs refills," Marcus, the bartender, murmured as she passed. Nia nodded, already reaching for the wine bottle. That's when the atmosphere shifted. The front door opened, and the restaurant's oxygen seemed to vanish. Conversations didn't just lower, they stopped mid-sentence. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Even the jazz pianist's fingers stumbled over keys before recovering. Nia's stomach clenched with a familiar dread. Thursday, of course. She looked up. 3 men in black suits entered first, moving like shadows with purpose, their eyes scanning the room with the cold assessment of wolves entering a henhouse. But it was the man behind them who commanded the silence. Ren Takahiro didn't walk. He claimed space. Broad-shouldered and lean, his black suit cut with such precision it looked weapon-sharp. His hair, dark as ink, was pulled back severely, revealing a face that could have been carved from stone, all hard angles and aristocratic coldness. Intricate tattoos crept up from his collar, black ink that whispered of Yakuza heritage and violence earned, not inherited. Nia's hands tightened around the wine bottle. She'd worked at the Ren long enough to know exactly who he was, and more than that, she knew what he was to her. For 6 weeks now, every Thursday without fail, Ren Takahiro had requested her specifically. At first, she'd thought it was coincidence, then preference. Now she knew better. It was ritual, and she was his chosen victim. Her manager, David, appeared at her elbow, his face pale and slick with sweat. His hand gripped her arm too tightly. "Table 12. He's asking for you again." "David, please." Nia's voice dropped to a whisper. "Can't someone else? He tips $2,000 every time he comes here, Nia. 2,000. You serve him, you smile, and you take whatever he gives you. Understand?" She wanted to refuse. God, how she wanted to walk out that door and never come back. But rent was due. Her brother's medical bills were mounting, and jobs that paid this well didn't grow on trees, especially not for women who looked like her. Nia straightened her spine, swallowed the bitter taste of resignation, and walked toward table 12. The memories of the past 6 Thursdays flashed through her mind like a horror reel. The first week, he'd accidentally knocked an entire bottle of Bordeaux into her lap, the wine soaking through her uniform and staining her skin red. She'd spent the rest of her shift sticky and humiliated while he watched with those dead eyes. The second week, he'd grabbed the hem of her skirt as she walked past, tearing the fabric with a sharp rip that made the entire restaurant gasp. She'd had to safety pin it closed in the bathroom, her hands shaking with rage and shame. Week 3. He'd insisted she lean close to hear his order, then poured ice water down the back of her uniform, his expression never changing as she gasped from the shock. Last Thursday had been the worst. He'd criticized everything, her posture, her voice, the way she held his plate. Then, with surgical precision, he'd reached up and pulled the pins from her hair, letting her carefully arranged bun tumble down around her shoulders. "There," he'd said quietly. "Now you look like you belong in the kitchen. Not serving men like me." Her coworkers had stared. No one said a word. No one ever did. Nia approached table 12, where Ren Takahiro and his men had already settled into the corner booth, the best seat in the house, the one that gave a clear view of both exits. His guards sat rigid, their eyes tracking every movement in the room like security cameras made of flesh. But Ren's gaze found her immediately, locking on with the intensity of a predator who'd been waiting. "Nia," he said her name like he owned it, right on time. "Good evening, Mr. Takahiro." Her voice came out steady, professional, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "Welcome back to the Ren." "Welcome back?" His lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile, more like the ghost of one. "As if I ever leave. This place has become habit." His eyes dragged slowly down her uniform, then back up. "And you're my favorite part of it." The words should have been a compliment. Instead, they felt like ownership. She set the menu on the table, even though she knew he never looked at it. "Can I start you with—" "Tell me, Nia," Ren interrupted, leaning back in his seat with practiced ease. "Did you fix your uniform from last week, or did you have to buy a new one?" His tone was conversational, curious even, but his eyes glinted with cruel amusement. "I do hope I didn't cause too much trouble." Heat flashed through her chest. Every fiber of her being wanted to throw the menu in his face, to tell him exactly what she thought of men who got their power from humiliating working women. But rent was due. Her brother needed his medication. "It's fine," she managed through gritted teeth. "Good." Ren tilted his head, studying her like a scientist examining an insect. "You know what I appreciate about you, Nia? You keep coming back, week after week. Most people would have quit by now, found another restaurant, another city even." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But not you. You're resilient, or desperate. I haven't decided which." "I'll give you a moment to decide on your order," she said, turning to leave. "I've decided." His voice stopped her cold. "Bring me your most expensive steak, rare, and that wine you wore so beautifully 2 weeks ago. The Chateau Margaux, wasn't it? The mention of that night. The way he'd deliberately poured wine all over her made her jaw clench so hard her teeth ached. Nia nodded once and walked back to the kitchen, her hands trembling only when she was out of sight. She pressed her palms against the cold steel counter, breathing deeply, fighting the urge to scream. "You okay?" Marcus asked quietly, his dark eyes concerned. "No," she whispered. "But I don't have a choice." For the next 40 minutes, she served him in careful silence, brought the wine, a 2015 Chateau Margaux that cost more than her monthly rent, delivered the steak, cooked blood rare as requested, refilled water glasses with mechanical precision, always staying just out of reach, always prepared for whatever fresh hell he'd conjured up this week. But Ren seemed different tonight, calmer, almost contemplative. He ate slowly, deliberately, each motion calculated. His men never touched their food. They just watched. Maybe, Nia thought with a flutter of desperate hope, maybe tonight he'd just eat and leave. Maybe the ritual was ending. She should have known better. When Nia came to clear his plate, Ren leaned back, dabbing his lips with the cloth napkin. His expression revealed nothing. No satisfaction, no complaint, just that same predatory assessment she'd come to dread. Then, with casual cruelty, he shoved the wine glass toward the table's edge. It tumbled, shattered. Dark red wine spread across the white marble like blood. The restaurant went silent again. "Clumsy," Ren murmured, his voice carrying through the hush. "You know, Nia, after 6 weeks, I'd think you'd have learned to be more careful around my table." He gestured lazily at the spreading wine. "But perhaps some people are just born to make messes." Something inside her cracked. 6 weeks. 6 Thursday nights of abuse, of humiliation, of swallowing rage and shame because she needed this job, needed the money, needed to survive in a city that chewed up women like her and spit them out. And for what? So this man could have his weekly entertainment? So he could feel powerful by making her feel small? Her manager appeared instantly, stammering apologies. "Mr. Takahiro, I'm so sorry. We'll comp your entire... Maybe, Nia said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. If you treated people like they were human, your food wouldn't taste like disrespect. The world stopped. Every eye in the Ren turned toward her. The jazz pianist's hands stilled on the keys. Waiter stood frozen mid-step. Her manager's face drained of all color, his mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. Ren Takahiro's guards tensed, hands moving toward concealed weapons. But Ren himself? He just stared at her, those obsidian eyes widening fractionally. The first crack in his mask she'd seen in 6 weeks of torment. For a moment nobody moved, nobody breathed. Then, slowly, deliberately, Ren leaned back in his seat, his head tilted slightly, as if seeing her for the first time, and smiled. Not a smirk, not a sneer, a genuine smile that transformed his face from stone to something almost human, and infinitely more dangerous. Finally, he said softly, his voice carrying a strange note of satisfaction, almost relief. Some guts. The words hung in the air like smoke. He stood, towering over the table, and reached into his jacket. Nia's breath caught, but he pulled out a money clip, peeled off what looked like several $1,000s, and dropped them on the table. Keep it all, he said, his eyes never leaving hers. You've earned it. Then he did something he'd never done in 6 weeks of Thursday nights. He extended his hand toward her, not to grab, not to humiliate, but as if offering something. A handshake, an acknowledgement. Next Thursday, he said quietly. I expect you here. Same table, but this time. His smile deepened, becoming something she couldn't quite read. This time, I want to see what happens when you stop holding back. Nia stared at his outstretched hand but didn't take it. She wouldn't give him that satisfaction. Instead, she lifted her chin and met his gaze with steel in her own. If you come back, Mr. Takahiro, bring better manners, or don't come at all, the restaurant gasped. Ren's hand lowered slowly, but his smile never wavered. If anything, it grew. Perfect, he whispered, then turned and walked out, his men following like shadows, leaving a restaurant full of people too stunned to breathe. Nia stood there, her entire body shaking, not with fear, but with the adrenaline of 6 weeks of compressed rage finally finding its voice. Her hands trembled. Her heart was a war drum in her chest. She'd done the impossible. Talked back to Ren Takahiro not once but twice, and lived. But as the door closed behind him and the whispers erupted around her, as her manager grabbed her arm and hissed about unemployment and consequences, Nia realized something that made her blood run cold. Surviving his wrath might have been the easy part, because the way he'd looked at her in that final moment, the way he'd smiled, the way he'd said, perfect, like she'd just passed some twisted test she didn't know she was taking, told her this wasn't over. Not even close. For 6 weeks, she'd been his victim. Now, she'd become something far more dangerous. His fascination. Nia didn't sleep that night. She lay in her small studio apartment, staring at the water-stained ceiling, while her mind replayed the moment over and over. The shattered wine glass, the suffocating silence, Ren Takahiro's smile. That smile haunted her more than any threat could have. It was the smile of a man who'd just discovered something unexpected, something he wanted. By the time gray dawn light crept through her curtains, she'd convinced herself of 2 things. Either she'd be dead by Monday, or she'd just made the biggest mistake of her life. Turned out, it was neither. It was worse. The rumors started before she even arrived at work Friday morning. Nia's phone buzzed at 7 a.m. A text from Jasmine, one of the other waitresses. Girl, you're famous. Everyone's talking about you. Then Marcus, you okay? People are asking questions. Then her cousin Dre, who worked security at a club on the south side. Yo, what the hell did you do last night? Your name is in streets I didn't even know you knew existed. Nia's stomach twisted. She dressed quickly, pulling her hair into a tight bun and choosing her most professional outfit, as if looking put together could somehow shield her from whatever was coming. The moment she walked into the Wren staff entrance, the atmosphere changed. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Eyes that usually greeted her with warm good mornings now slid away, finding sudden fascination with prep work and inventory lists. Jasmine, who'd been her friend for 2 years, actually turned and walked in the opposite direction when she saw Nia approaching. Jas? Nia called after her. Jasmine paused but didn't turn around. I can't, Nia. I'm sorry. Her voice was barely a whisper. My mama said to stay away from you. She said people who cross Ren Takahiro don't. They don't last. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Marcus was the only one who met her eyes when she entered the kitchen. He handed her a cup of coffee without a word, but his expression said everything. You're brave. But brave doesn't mean safe. Is it really that bad? Nia asked quietly. Worse, Marcus replied, his voice low. You're a legend in the worst possible way. I heard 3 different versions of what happened last night, and in 2 of them, you're already dead. But I'm standing right here. That's what's scaring people. Before Nia could respond, David, the manager, appeared in the kitchen doorway. His face was pale, his tie slightly askew, like he'd dressed in a hurry or hadn't slept, probably both. Nia, my office, now. David's office smelled like stale coffee and desperation. He closed the door behind them and immediately started pacing, running his hands through his thinning hair. Do you have any idea what you've done? He didn't yell. His voice was worse than yelling. It was the quiet panic of a man watching his livelihood circle the drain. Any idea at all? I defended myself, Nia said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. He's been harassing me for 6 weeks. Harassing? David laughed, a brittle sound. Nia, that man spends $10,000 every Thursday night. He brings clients here, high-profile clients, politicians, businessmen, people who matter. He stopped pacing and stared at her. You're a waitress, a replaceable waitress. The words stung, but Nia had heard worse. Then replace me. I can't. David's voice cracked. Because he called this morning. Personally. Do you know what he said? Nia's blood ran cold. What? He said, and I quote, make sure Nia Caldwell works next Thursday. Same table. If she's not there, I'll find somewhere else to spend my Thursdays. David leaned against his desk, suddenly looking 10 years older. He's coming back, Nia, and he's asking for you specifically. Again. The room tilted slightly. Nia gripped the back of the chair to steady herself. I don't understand. Neither do I. David's voice dropped to barely a whisper. But here's what I do understand. The Ren doesn't need martyrs. It needs waitresses who show up, serve food, and go home without making waves. If you want to keep this job, if you want to keep breathing, you'll be here next Thursday. You'll smile. You'll serve him. And you'll keep whatever fire you found last night buried so deep it never sees daylight again. He opened the door, a clear dismissal. Now get to work. And Nia, stay out of trouble. I can't protect you from men like him, as if he'd ever tried. The shift dragged like pulling teeth. Every customer who walked through the door made Nia's shoulders tense. Every time the entrance chime rang, she half expected to see Ren Takahiro standing there, that predatory smile on his face. But he never came. Somehow, that was worse. At 10 p.m., when her shift finally ended, Nia changed out of her uniform in record time. She just wanted to go home, lock her door, and pretend the last 24 hours had been a bad dream. The October night was crisp, the kind of cold that promised winter wasn't far behind. Chicago's streets glowed under streetlights, neon signs from corner stores and late-night diners bleeding color into the darkness. Nia pulled her jacket tighter and started the 15-minute walk to her apartment. She made it 3 blocks before she noticed the car. A black Lexus, sleek and expensive, idling at the curb half a block behind her. Its tinted windows were impenetrable, revealing nothing, but she felt the weight of eyes on her back like physical touch. Nia's pulse quickened. She walked faster, turned a corner. The Lexus followed. She turned another corner, cutting through a side street she normally avoided at night. The Lexus stayed exactly half a block behind, never closing the distance, never falling back, just watching. Her apartment building appeared like salvation. A modest brick structure with a broken security light and graffiti on the ground floor. Nia practically ran up the front steps, her keys already in her hand. The Lexus stopped across the street, engine idling, headlights dark. Nia's hands shook as she fumbled with the lock. Come on, come on, come on. The door opened. She stumbled inside and slammed it behind her, engaging both locks and the chain. Through the door's small window, she watched the Lexus. It sat there for exactly 1 minute. Then, As if satisfied, it pulled away into the night, disappearing around the corner like a ghost. Nia pressed her forehead against the cool door, her breath coming in short gasps. She was being followed, watched, tracked like prey. It took her 5 minutes to work up the courage to climb the stairs to her third-floor studio. Her legs felt like lead, every shadow in the stairwell a potential threat. When she finally reached her door, exhausted and strung out on adrenaline, she almost didn't notice it at first. Then her eyes focused, and her heart stopped. On her doormat, directly in front of her door, sat a single white lily. Perfect, pristine. Its petals were still fresh, as if it had been placed there minutes ago. No vase, no wrapping, no note. Just the flower, its white petals almost glowing in the dim hallway light. Nia's hand flew to her mouth. White lilies. In Japanese culture, they were funeral flowers, symbols of death, of mourning, but they were also symbols of purity, of devotion. She didn't know which meaning Ren intended, and that uncertainty was its own kind of terror. With shaking hands, Nia unlocked her door and stepped inside, leaving the lily where it lay. She couldn't bring herself to touch it, couldn't bring herself to throw it away, either. So it stayed there, a silent sentinel, a message without words. Inside her apartment, Nia locked every lock, checked every window twice, and pulled all the curtains closed. Only then did she allow herself to sink onto her second-hand couch, her body finally giving in to the exhaustion. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Her blood turned to ice. She stared at the screen for a long moment before opening it. The message contained only 3 words. "Sleep well, Nia." The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the floor. He knew where she lived. He knew her number. He'd followed her home and left flowers on her doorstep like some twisted suitor. And now he was in her phone, in her messages. 3 words that proved she had no privacy, no safety, no escape from whatever game he'd decided to play. Nia curled into herself on the couch, her mind racing. She should call the police, should report the stalking, the harassment, the threats. But what would she tell them? That a man left her a flower? That he sent her a text that wasn't explicitly threatening? The Chicago PD barely investigated murders in her neighborhood. They certainly wouldn't protect a black waitress from a man with Ren Takahiro's power and connections. She was alone in this. As the night deepened, and the city's sounds faded to distant white noise, Nia finally understood the truth. Last night, when she'd talked back to Ren Takahiro, she hadn't just defended her dignity. She'd awakened something in him. Something dark and obsessive and utterly relentless. And now he was watching. Always watching. The white lily on her doorstep would still be there in the morning, she knew. A reminder that she'd crossed a line she could never uncross. That she'd caught the attention of a man who didn't know how to let go. Nia closed her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. All she could see was that smile, finally. Some guts. The week crawled by like a death sentence counting down. Every morning, Nia found a white lily on her doorstep. Every night, the black Lexus idled across from her building. She stopped sleeping properly, catching only fragmented hours of rest punctuated by dreams of obsidian eyes and predatory smiles. Her coworkers still avoided her. Jasmine had requested a schedule change to avoid overlapping shifts. Marcus remained her only ally, though even he kept their conversations brief and whispered, as if speaking too loudly about her situation might draw attention. By Wednesday night, Nia had almost convinced herself that maybe Ren wouldn't come, that maybe his interest had been momentary, a wealthy man's fleeting fascination with something unusual, that maybe Thursday would pass like any other night. She should have known better. Thursday evening arrived with the weight of inevitability. The moment Nia walked into the Ren for her shift, she felt it. The electric tension in the air, the way staff members moved with nervous energy, the way David kept checking his watch and adjusting his tie. He called ahead, Marcus murmured as he passed her in the kitchen. Requested table 12. Requested you. 8 o'clock sharp. Nia's stomach dropped. Did he say anything else? Just that he expects proper service. Marcus squeezed her shoulder briefly. You sure you want to do this? She wasn't sure of anything anymore, but she nodded anyway. At 7:55 p.m., the restaurant's ambient chatter died like someone had cut the power. Nia looked up from where she was arranging silverware and saw him. Ren Takahiro entered alone this time. No entourage. No guards flanking him like attack dogs. Just him in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her yearly rent. His dark hair pulled back, that same unreadable expression on his carved features. But something was different. He didn't command the space the way he had before. He didn't need to. His presence was quieter now, more contained, like a blade sheathed but still dangerous. His eyes found her immediately, and for a heartbeat, something passed between them. Acknowledgement, perhaps, or recognition of a line they'd both crossed. David materialized at her side, his hand gripping her elbow. "Remember what I said. Professional, courteous." "No." "I know." Nia cut him off, pulling free. She straightened her uniform, lifted her chin, and walked toward table 12. Ren watched her approach with the focused attention of a man studying a puzzle he was determined to solve. As she reached the table, he stood. Actually stood. A gesture of courtesy she hadn't expected. Nia. Her name on his lips sounded different than it had before. Less like ownership, more like something she couldn't name. "Mr. Takahiro." She kept her voice professional, neutral. "Welcome back to the Ren." "Ren," he corrected quietly. "I think we're past formalities, don't you?" She didn't respond, just held out the menu. He glanced at it but didn't take it. "I have a question for you," he said, settling back into his seat with fluid grace. "And I want you to answer honestly." Nia's pulse quickened. "I don't owe you honesty." His lips curved, not quite a smile, but close. "No, but I'm asking anyway." He leaned forward slightly. "That night, when you talked back, were you trying to die, or were you trying to live?" The question caught her off guard. She'd expected mockery, intimidation, the same cruel games he'd played for 6 weeks. Not this. Not genuine curiosity. "I was trying," she said slowly, "to keep my dignity." Dignity. He repeated the word like he was tasting it, testing its weight. "How much is dignity worth to you, Nia? Is it worth your life? Is your pride worth everyone's fear?" She countered. For a moment, Ren just stared at her. Then he did something extraordinary. He laughed. A real laugh, quiet and brief, but genuine. It transformed his face completely, erasing years of coldness and revealing something almost human underneath. "Fair point," he conceded. Then his expression shifted back to that unreadable mask. "I'll have whatever you think I'd like." Nia blinked. "I'm sorry?" "You heard me." He closed the menu and pushed it toward her. 6 weeks. You've served me what I ordered. Tonight, I want to see what you choose. What you think a man like me deserves. It was a test. Everything with him was a test. Nia could have chosen something cheap, petty revenge for weeks of humiliation, or something safe, middle of the road. Instead, she chose truth. "I'll be back," she said. In the kitchen, her hands worked on autopilot while her mind raced. What did a man like Ren Takahiro deserve? What would satisfy someone who'd probably tasted every luxury the world offered? She chose the Wagyu ribeye, the most expensive cut on the menu, cooked rare enough to still bleed. Not because she was trying to impress him, but because men like Ren understood power, and power tasted like blood and money. She paired it with Yamazaki 18, a Japanese whiskey that cost $200 a pour. When she set the plate and glass before him, Ren studied both for a long moment. Then his eyes lifted to hers. "Still brave, I see." "Still standing," she replied. He picked up the whiskey, swirled it once, and took a slow sip. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or approval. "You know Japanese whiskey. I know what power tastes like." "And what does it taste like?" "Expensive," Nia said. "And lonely." The words hung between them, charged with meaning she hadn't intended to reveal. Ren's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign her words had landed. He cut into the steak, the knife sliding through flesh with practiced precision, took a bite, chewed slowly, deliberately. His face revealed nothing, but he took another bite, then another. "Sit," he said quietly. "I'm working." "Sit, please." The please surprised her more than anything else had. Against her better judgment, Nia slid into the seat across from him, hyper-aware of every eye in the restaurant watching them. "Why do you keep coming back here?" she asked. "Why me?" Ren set down his fork, his dark eyes locked on hers. Because everyone in my life says yes. To everything. Always. They bow and scrape and tell me what they think I want to hear. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. But you? You told me my food tasted like disrespect. You looked at me like I was just a man. Do you have any idea how rare that is? So, I'm entertainment. No. His response was immediate, sharp. You're real. In a world made of smoke and mirrors and people who disappear when I stop looking at them, you're the only thing that feels solid. He paused. That feels true. Nia's breath caught. This was more dangerous than his cruelty had ever been. This honesty, this glimpse behind the monster's mask. I should get back to work, she said, starting to rise. Nia. He didn't raise his voice, but she stopped. I'm not trying to scare you. I wanted you to know that. She looked back at him. This complicated man who was feared and powerful and utterly alone. You don't scare me anymore, she said quietly. You confuse me. And that might be worse. When his meal was finished and she brought the check, Ren left 10 $100 bills on the table. Underneath them, a simple card in elegant script. Courage looks good on you. He stood, buttoned his jacket, and paused beside her, close enough that she could smell cedar and smoke, close enough to feel the warmth radiating from him. Next Thursday? He asked. It wasn't a command this time. It was a question. Nia didn't answer. She just held his gaze until he nodded once and left, walking out into the Chicago night alone. Later, when she counted her tips, she found the $1,000 and the card. Her fingers traced the words, elegant handwriting that somehow seemed vulnerable despite its perfection. Marcus appeared at her shoulder. You okay? I don't know, Nia admitted. I really don't know. Because the man who'd tormented her for 6 weeks had just revealed something she never expected to find: humanity. And that made everything infinitely more complicated. The envelope arrived on Monday morning. Nia was hunched over her laptop, staring at her bank account and trying to figure out how to stretch her last paycheck to cover rent, groceries, and her brother Devin's prescriptions. When someone knocked on her door, she wasn't expecting anyone. Hadn't been expecting anyone since the white lilies started appearing. Through the peephole, she saw no one. Just empty hallway. But when she opened the door cautiously, she found a cream-colored envelope on her doormat. Heavy paper. Expensive. Her name written in that same elegant script from the card. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter from her landlord. She scanned it once, then again, certain she'd misread. Dear Miss Caldwell, we are writing to inform you that your rent has been paid in full for the next 6 months by an anonymous benefactor. Please see the attached receipt for confirmation. The paper slipped from her fingers. 6 months. Someone had paid 6 months of her rent. That was over $9,000. She knew exactly who. The phone rang an hour later. Her brother Devin, calling from his apartment across town, where he was recovering from his latest round of treatment for his chronic kidney disease. Nia, you're not going to believe this. Devin's voice was bright, disbelieving. I got a call from the hospital. Someone paid off my entire bill. $15,000. They said it was an anonymous donation specifically earmarked for my account. Nia's chest tightened. Devin, I know we don't know any rich people, but maybe it was one of those charity things? Or a church group? Nia, this is a miracle. I can actually afford my medications now without worrying about. Dev, I have to go. Nia interrupted, her voice strained. I'll call you later. She hung up before he could ask questions she couldn't answer. By Tuesday, she'd discovered more. A mysterious billing error had cleared her $3,000 in credit card debt. The parking tickets she'd been avoiding had vanished from the city system. Even her car, which had been on the verge of repossession, suddenly had its loan restructured with impossibly favorable terms. Every problem in her life methodically solved by invisible hands. Wednesday night, she couldn't take it anymore. Nia showed up at the Ren 3 hours before her shift, knowing he'd be there. Ren Takahiro had dinner reservations every Wednesday at 6. Marcus had mentioned it once, back before everything changed. She found him exactly where she expected. Table 12, alone, reviewing documents with the focused attention of a man building empires. His head lifted when she approached, surprise flickering across his features. Nia, you're early. We need to talk. Now. Something in her tone made him close the folder and gesture to the seat across from him. Please. She didn't sit. Stop. Stop what? You know exactly what. Her voice was low but fierce. My rent, my brother's hospital bills, my debts, all of it. Stop playing God with my life. Ren leaned back, his expression unreadable. I don't know what you're… Don't. She cut him off. Don't insult me by lying. You're the only person with the power and the obsession to do this. For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then Ren's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. Sit down, Nia. I don't take orders from you. Then sit down as a favor to me, he said quietly. Please. There was that word again. Please. It disarmed her every time. Nia sat, her posture rigid, hands clenched in her lap. I take care of what's mine, Ren said simply. I'm not yours. His eyes locked onto hers, intense and unwavering. You will be. The words should have terrified her. Instead, they sent heat flooding through her veins, anger mixed with something she refused to name. You can't buy me. Nia's voice shook. You think solving my problems makes me owe you something? No. Ren's response was immediate. I think you've been drowning, and I threw you a life raft. What you do with it is your choice. Why do you care? He was quiet for a long moment, his fingers drumming once against the table. The first nervous gesture she'd ever seen from him, because when I close my eyes, I see you standing in that restaurant, wine soaking into the floor, telling me my food tastes like disrespect. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt something other than cold. He leaned forward. You woke me up, Nia, and I'm not going to let you drown in problems I can solve with a phone call. That's not love, she whispered. That's obsession. Maybe, he agreed, but it's honest. Nia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Stay out of my life, Ren, if you want to. If you want whatever this is, you don't get to control me. You don't get to solve me like I'm some equation. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. I can't. She looked back. Can't what? Stay out of your life. His expression was raw, vulnerable in a way that made her chest ache. I've tried. I've spent a week trying to convince myself to let this go. To let you go. And I can't, Nia. I don't know how. The confession hung in the air between them. Dangerous, electric, impossible to ignore. Nia swallowed hard. Then learn. She left before he could respond, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. That night, when she returned to her apartment, she found another white lily. But this time, it sat in a delicate glass vase on her kitchen counter. A vase she'd never owned, in an apartment she'd locked that morning. The lily was fresh, perfect, its white petals almost glowing in the dim light. Beside it, a small card. I'm trying, but some things are worth the fight. Nia stared at the lily, at the vase, at the evidence that Ren Takahiro had been inside her home, that he could reach her anywhere, anytime, that locks and doors and distance meant nothing to a man with his resources. She should have been terrified, should have called the police, should have run. Instead, she picked up the lily and inhaled its sweet scent, her mind a war between fear and something infinitely more dangerous, because part of her, a part she didn't want to acknowledge. He had noticed the vase was beautiful, that the gesture was thoughtful, not threatening, that the card's words carried a vulnerability she never expected from a man like him. Nia set the lily back in its vase and sank onto her couch, staring at it as the city lights filtered through her curtains. She was in dangerous territory now. The kind where the line between captor and savior blurred, where obsession wore the mask of devotion. And the most terrifying part? She wasn't sure she wanted him to stop. November brought early snow to Chicago. Fat white flakes drifted through the night air, muffling the city's usual cacophony into something almost peaceful. The kind of snow that made everything look clean, new, like the world was being given a chance to start over. Nia's Thursday shift had run late. A private party, demanding customers, tips that would help her feel less guilty about the rent she hadn't technically paid. It was nearly midnight when she finally changed out of her uniform and stepped into the cold. The alley behind the Wren was the fastest route to the main street, a narrow passage between brick buildings that most people avoided after dark. But Nia had walked it 100 times, and tonight, with snow falling like a blessing, it felt almost safe. She made it halfway through before she realized she wasn't alone. You shouldn't walk alone at night. Nia's heart stopped. She spun around to find Ren Takahiro standing at the alley's entrance, snowflakes catching in his dark hair, his long black coat making him look like a shadow given form. Jesus Christ, she breathed, pressing a hand to her chest. Are you trying to give me a heart attack? I'm trying, he said, walking toward her with measured steps. To make sure you get home safely. By lurking in alleys like a serial killer? By waiting 3 hours in the cold to walk you home. He stopped a few feet away, close enough to speak quietly but far enough to give her space. Your shift ended at 11. It's now midnight. I was starting to worry. Nia stared at him, at this impossibly powerful man who looked almost vulnerable in the falling snow, and felt her anger war with something softer. You can't keep doing this, she said. Following me, watching me, breaking into my apartment to leave flowers. I know. Then stop. I can't. His voice was quiet, almost lost in the snow. You talk to me like I'm not supposed to scare you. You don't, Nia lied. Ren took a step closer, his dark eyes searching hers. Liar. You're terrified. I can see it in the way your hands shake when you serve me, the way you check over your shoulder when you walk home. You're afraid of me. Yes, she admitted, but not the way you think. Then how? She swallowed hard, the truth clawing its way up her throat. I'm afraid of what happens if I stop fighting you. I'm afraid of what it means that sometimes, when I find those lilies, I'm relieved instead of scared. I'm afraid that you're not the monster I need you to be. Ren went very still. Snow gathered on his shoulders, his hair, making him look almost ethereal in the amber streetlight bleeding into the alley. You think I'm hiding behind power, he said finally. That I use fear because I'm afraid to be seen. Maybe you're right. He took another step forward. But maybe I just found something worth stepping into the light for. They were close now, close enough that Nia could see the snowflakes melting on his coat, could smell cedar and smoke and winter cold. Close enough to feel the heat radiating from him in the freezing air. What do you want from me, Ren? Her voice came out whisper soft. Everything, he said simply. I want you to look at me the way you did that Thursday night, like I'm just a man who needs to learn better manners. I want you to challenge me, to push back, to refuse to bow. His hand lifted slowly, telegraphing the movement, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers ghosted along her jaw, barely touching. I want to be worthy of the woman who had the courage to tell me I tasted like disrespect. Nia's breath caught. His touch was warm despite the cold, gentle in a way that contradicted everything she knew about him. You're a criminal, she whispered. A killer. You've destroyed lives. Yes. He didn't deny it, didn't make excuses. I've done terrible things to build my empire. I won't apologize for surviving, for clawing my way to power when the world tried to bury me. His thumb traced her cheekbone with devastating softness. But I've never felt more alive than when you looked at me with fire in your eyes and refused to break. This is insane. Nia breathed, but she didn't pull away. Probably. A ghost of a smile touched his lips, but sanity is overrated. For one suspended heartbeat, they stood there. The Mafia king and the waitress, predator and prey. Two people who shouldn't fit but somehow did, while snow fell around them like the world was holding its breath. Then Nia did something that surprised them both. She reached up and brushed snow from his hair, her touch tentative, testing. If we do this, whatever this is, I need you to understand something. Anything. I'm not your possession. I'm not some prize you won by breaking me down until I said yes. If I choose this, I choose it because I want to. Not because I'm afraid, not because you paid my rent, not because you're powerful. Her eyes locked onto his. I choose it because I see you, the real you, and despite everything, despite the danger and the fear and the absolute insanity of it, I want to know what happens if the monster learns to be human again. Ren's expression cracked open, revealing something raw and desperate and startlingly young. His hand cupped her face fully now, his touch reverent. You terrify me, he whispered. Good. Nia's lips curved slightly. Then we're even. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, to change her mind, to run. But Nia stayed rooted, her heart thundering as his lips brushed hers, soft, questioning, nothing like the cruel man who'd tormented her for weeks. The kiss was gentle, almost chaste, but it burned through her like fire. When he pulled back, his eyes were dark with emotion. I don't know how to do this. How to be gentle. Then we'll learn together, Nia said. They stood there in the snowy alley, two impossible people finding something possible in the space between fear and trust. Let me walk you home, Ren said finally. No cars, no watching. Just let me make sure you're safe. Nia nodded, and together they walked through the snow-quiet streets of Chicago, the Mafia king who'd learned to feel again, and the waitress who'd taught him how. When they reached her building, Ren paused at the steps. Thursday? He asked. Thursday, she confirmed. He smiled, genuine and warm and almost hopeful, then disappeared into the falling snow like a dream. Inside her apartment, Nia found another lily, but this time the card read simply, "Thank you for seeing me." She held the card against her chest and smiled, her hands trembling, but this time, not from fear. The gold-embossed card arrived on a Friday afternoon, slipped under Nia's door with the silence of a ghost. She found it when she came home from grocery shopping, her arms laden with bags, exhaustion pulling at her bones. The envelope practically glowed against her worn doormat. Cream-colored paper so thick and expensive it felt like fabric between her fingers. No return address, no postage, just her name in that familiar elegant script. Inside, a single card, dinner, 8 p.m., Saturday, the Black Lantern. Don't make me wait, no signature. But the weight of the paper, the gold embossing catching the hallway light, the sheer audacity of the summons. She knew exactly who it was from. Nia should have thrown it away, should have ignored it, blocked his number, maybe even left Chicago like she'd been considering. But her fingers traced the embossed lettering, and she remembered the taste of his kiss in the snow, the vulnerability in his eyes when he'd said, "You terrify me." Against every instinct screaming at her to run, she decided to go. The Black Lantern sat in a part of Chicago most people only whispered about, the kind of establishment that didn't advertise, didn't need to, where power brokers and criminals made deals that never saw daylight. The building was understated from the outside, just a black door with a brass lantern hanging above it, but the two men flanking the entrance in expensive suits told a different story. Nia approached in the only dress she owned that felt appropriate, a simple black sheath she'd worn to her mother's funeral 3 years ago. Her natural hair fell in soft curls around her shoulders, and she'd lined her eyes with the precision of someone preparing for battle. The guards assessed her with cold efficiency. One spoke into a hidden earpiece, then nodded and opened the door. Inside, the Black Lantern was a study in controlled decadence. Low lighting, all amber and shadow, the air thick with cigar smoke and expensive cologne, jazz bleeding from hidden speakers, the kind of sultry, dangerous music that made you want to confess sins you hadn't committed yet. Leather booths lined the walls, occupied by men and women who looked like they owned pieces of the world. A hostess in a black cocktail dress materialized. "Miss Caldwell, this way, please." She led Nia through the main room, past tables where conversations died as she walked by, past stairs that assessed and dismissed her in seconds. They climbed a spiral staircase to a private second floor where the music was softer, the lighting more intimate, and there, at a table overlooking the main floor through one-way glass, sat Ren Takahiro. He stood as she approached, that same courtesy that always caught her off guard. Tonight he wore a black suit with a subtle charcoal pinstripe, no tie, his collar open just enough to reveal the edge of his tattoos. His dark eyes tracked her movement like she was the only thing in the room worth watching. "You came," he said, and she heard relief underneath the words. "You summoned," Nia replied, stopping at the table but not sitting. "Very romantic. I especially love the 'don't make me wait' part. Really set a respectful tone." His lips curved. "Would you have come if I'd asked nicely? Guess we'll never know." They stared at each other for a beat, then Ren gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit. I promise I'll be on my best behavior." "That's what I'm afraid of," Nia murmured, but she sat. A waiter appeared immediately with champagne. Dom Perignon, the label read, probably worth more than her car. Ren poured for both of them with practiced grace. "I didn't come to eat," he said, setting down the bottle. "I came to see if your fire still burns." Nia picked up her glass, studying him over the rim. "And if it doesn't?" Then I've made a mistake. His expression was serious, unguarded. And I'll let you walk away. Just like that? Just like that. She didn't believe him. But she took a sip of champagne anyway, bubbles bursting on her tongue, expensive and cold and somehow lonely tasting, just like she'd told him power would be. Why am I here, Ren? Because I'm trying to do this right. He leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. A position that was almost vulnerable, almost pleading. I know how we started. I know I was cruel. That I hurt you. That I have no right to ask for anything from you. But I'm asking anyway. He paused. Have dinner with me. Not as the man who tormented you. As the man who wants to know what makes you laugh. What you dream about. What you see when you look at the stars. Nia's chest tightened. You're a crime lord, Ren. You don't get to have romantic dinners and pretend you're something you're not. I'm not pretending. His voice was low, intense. I am what I am. I won't apologize for it. But I'm also a man who hasn't felt anything real in a decade until you looked at me with fire in your eyes. He reached across the table, his hand palm up, offering, I just want one night where we're not predator and prey, where we're just two people sharing a meal. Nia stared at his offered hand. She could walk away, should walk away, but instead, she placed her hand in his. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, careful, like she was something precious. They ate. And they talked. Ren asked questions she didn't expect. About her childhood in Atlanta. About why she came to Chicago. About her brother Devin and the mother they'd both lost. He listened with the focus of someone truly hearing her, not just waiting for his turn to speak. In return, Nia asked about Japan. About the tattoos that marked his skin. About the brother he mentioned once, then quickly changed the subject. He answered some questions, deflected others, but she saw glimpses of the man beneath the monster. Someone who'd clawed his way to power because the alternative was death. Someone who'd built walls so high he'd forgotten what it felt like to let someone in. Hours passed like minutes. The champagne bottle emptied. Their chairs moved closer. When the waiter brought dessert, a delicate matcha panna cotta that Ren insisted she try, he fed her a spoonful, his eyes never leaving hers. The intimacy of it stole her breath. This is dangerous, Nia whispered. I know. We're from different worlds. I know that too. This can't work. Ren's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. Then let it not work spectacularly. Let it burn bright before it burns out. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I'm tired of being cold, Nia. You make me feel warm. She should have pulled away. Instead, she leaned into his touch. When she finally stood to leave, when the evening had stretched into early morning, and she knew she needed to go before she did something irrevocable, Ren caught her wrist. Not forcefully, just enough pressure to make her pause, to make her turn back and meet his eyes. Don't mistake my patience for weakness, Nia Caldwell. His voice was soft but edged with steel. I don't lose what fascinates me. I don't lose what fascinates me. Nia looked down at his hand on her wrist, then back up to his face. Her voice came out steady, challenging. Then maybe you'll finally learn how to lose. She pulled free gently and walked away, feeling his eyes on her back the entire time. In the car, he'd insisted on sending her home in. Nia touched her wrist where his fingers had been and wondered if she'd just made the best or worst decision of her life. Probably both. The first sign came on Monday. Nia returned from a grocery run to find her apartment door hanging slightly open. The lock mechanism scratched and dented. Her heart dropped into her stomach as she pushed the door wider, half expecting to find her home ransacked, her few valuable possessions gone. But everything was exactly where she'd left it. The TV still sat on its stand. Her laptop remained on the coffee table. Even the $20 in cash she kept in her kitchen drawer was untouched. Nothing stolen. Nothing obviously broken. Just the clear message, we can get to you whenever we want. Nia called the police. They came, took a report with barely concealed boredom, and told her it was probably kids looking for drug money who got spooked. When she mentioned that nothing was taken, the officer shrugged. You got lucky. But Nia knew better. This wasn't luck. This was a message. The question was, from who? By Wednesday, 3 of the Wren's waitstaff had quit without notice. Jasmine, who'd avoided Nia for weeks, left a resignation letter citing personal safety concerns. Marcus pulled Nia aside during their shift, his expression grave. People are scared, he said quietly. Word's gotten around about you and Takahiro. Some people think you're his girlfriend, others think you're bait. Either way, nobody wants to be near you when things get messy. Things aren't messy, Nia protested weakly. Marcus gave her a look that said you can't possibly believe that. That night, as Nia walked to her car after closing, a man in a black suit stepped out of the shadows. She recognized the type immediately. Expensive clothes, cold eyes. The kind of man who solved problems with violence. Nia Caldwell? Her hand tightened on her keys, threading them between her fingers. A makeshift weapon. Who's asking? I'm a messenger. He held up his hands, showing he was unarmed. My boss wanted me to deliver a message. What boss? The one who's concerned about your association with Ren Takahiro. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. My boss says you should stop provoking him, for your own safety. Nia's pulse hammered, but she kept her voice steady. Tell your boss I don't answer to men who hide behind messengers. The man's smile widened, becoming genuine. That's exactly what he said you'd say. He tilted his head, studying her with something like respect. That's why he likes you, you know. You don't bend. Who sent you? Someone who wants to see how this plays out. The man stepped back into the shadows. Be careful, Miss Caldwell. There are people in this city who see you as leverage, and leverage gets used. He disappeared before she could respond, leaving her alone in the parking lot with a racing heart and more questions than answers. Nia made it home safely, triple-checked her locks, and tried to convince herself everything was fine. She'd almost succeeded when, at midnight, she heard the restaurant's back door open downstairs. Her apartment was above a closed boutique, but the building shared a wall with the Wren's service entrance. She knew the sound of that door, the particular creak of old hinges, the way it scraped against concrete. Someone was in the restaurant. After hours, after everyone had gone home, Nia should have called the police, should have stayed in her apartment with the door locked. Instead, she grabbed the baseball bat she kept by her door and crept downstairs. The Wren was dark except for emergency lighting, casting everything in eerie red. Nia moved silently through the dining room, bat raised, her breath shallow. She found him in the kitchen. Ren Takahiro stood at the prep station, still in his suit, examining the knives mounted on the magnetic strip with idle curiosity. He didn't turn when she entered, but his voice carried clearly in the silence. You should lock your doors better. You should stop breaking into places. Nia lowered the bat but didn't set it down. What are you doing here? Making sure you're safe. He turned finally, and in the red emergency lighting, he looked almost demonic. All sharp angles and shadows. I heard about your apartment, about the break-in. And you wanted to do what? Break in again to prove a point? I wanted to make sure whoever sent that message understood that you're under my protection. His eyes found hers across the kitchen. Whether you want it or not. I don't need your protection. Yes, Ren said quietly. You do. Because my enemies think you're my weakness now, and they'll use you to get to me. Nia's stomach dropped. Your enemies did this? The break-in. The messenger. I don't know. For the first time, she heard uncertainty in his voice. It could be rivals testing my boundaries. It could be someone in my own organization who thinks I'm distracted. Or... He paused. It could be someone else entirely. You mean you, Nia said flatly. You could be testing me, seeing if I'll break. Ren crossed the kitchen in 3 strides, stopping just close enough to make her breath hitch. If I wanted to test you, Nia, you'd know. I don't play games with people I care about. You care about me? The words came out more vulnerable than she intended. Terrifyingly so. His hand lifted, hovering near her face but not quite touching. You're not afraid. Oh, I am, Nia whispered, finally admitting it fully. I'm scared of you, of your world, of whatever's happening between us. I'm scared that people are breaking into my home because of you. I'm scared that my coworkers are quitting because of me. Her voice cracked. I'm scared that I'm falling for you anyway, and I don't know how to stop. Ren's expression cracked open, vulnerability bleeding through. Then don't stop. Fall. I'll catch you. You're what I'm falling from. Then I'll catch you anyway. His forehead pressed against hers, their breath mingling in the small space between them. I just learned to breathe through it, she'd told the messenger. But standing here, With Ren Takahiro so close she could count his heartbeats, Nia realized she'd been holding her breath since the moment they met, and maybe it was time to finally exhale. Friday morning, David called her into his office before her shift. Nia knew from his expression. Pale, sweating, unable to meet her eyes. What was coming before he said the words? "I have to let you go." The words hit her like a physical blow, even though she'd been expecting them. "David, I'm sorry." He sounded it. He looked it, but he continued anyway. "Ren Takahiro's presence is bad for business. Half our regular customers are too scared to come in. We've had 3 bomb threats this week. 3. The owner says either you go or we close permanently, so you're choosing him over me. I'm choosing survival." David finally met her eyes. "I'm sorry, Nia. You're a good waitress, a great person, but I have a family. I can't have my restaurant become a war zone." Nia stood, her legs somehow steady despite the floor, feeling like it was tilting. "When?" "Today. I'll pay you through the end of the month, and I'll give you a reference for anywhere that's not connected. Anywhere that's not in Ren's world," he meant. Nia grabbed her purse, her jacket, and walked out of the Ren for the last time. She made it 3 blocks before the rage hit. All of it. The weeks of humiliation, the break-in, the fear, the isolation, losing her job. All of it crystallized into pure, white-hot fury. Ren Takahiro had crashed into her life like a wrecking ball and destroyed everything in his path. And for what? Because she'd talked back once? Because she'd made him feel alive? Nia didn't go home. She got in her car and drove to the one place she knew she'd find him. The Black Lantern was closed during the day, but the door was unlocked. She walked past the empty bar, up the spiral staircase, and found Ren in a private office overlooking the main floor. He looked up from paperwork, surprise flickering across his face. "Nia, why are you doing this to me?" She didn't yell. Her voice was low, controlled, vibrating with fury. "Why can't you just leave me alone?" Ren stood slowly, his expression careful. "What happened?" "I got fired. Because of you. Because your presence makes me radioactive. Because people are more scared of you than they care about me." Tears burned in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You've taken everything from me. My safety, my job, my peace of mind. What else do you want?" "You." The word was simple, devastating. "I want you." "You can't have me." The words exploded out of her. "I'm not some prize you win, some possession you claim. I'm a person, Ren, a person whose life you've destroyed." He crossed the room in seconds, but stopped just short of touching her. "Then let me rebuild it. I don't want your money." "Not money." His voice was fierce, urgent. "A place beside me. Not as a plaything, not as some kept woman, as my equal, as my partner." He reached for her hands, and this time she didn't pull away. "No one has ever looked at me and seen more than a weapon, Nia. Until you. You see the man underneath the monster. And I need that. I need you." "I didn't come here to save you," Nia whispered, tears finally spilling over. "I came to stop you, to make you leave me alone so I can have my life back." "Then stop me." Ren's hands tightened on hers, his voice dropping to barely a whisper. "Tell me to walk away, and I will. Tell me you feel nothing, and I'll disappear from your life forever. Tell me this is one-sided, that Saturday night meant nothing, that the kiss in the snow was a mistake." His eyes searched hers desperately. "Tell me, Nia, and I'll believe you." She opened her mouth. The words were right there. "Leave me alone. I feel nothing. You're a mistake." But they wouldn't come, because they'd be lies. "I hate you," she whispered instead. "I know. You've ruined my life. I know. I should walk away right now and never look back." "You should." Ren's forehead pressed against hers. "But will you?" Nia closed her eyes, feeling the tears track down her face, feeling the warmth of him, the solid reality of the most dangerous man in Chicago standing before her, vulnerable in a way she knew he'd never been before. "I don't know," she admitted. "I don't know anything anymore except that when I'm with you, I feel more alive and more terrified than I've ever felt. And I don't know if that's love or madness. Maybe it's both." His hands came up to cup her face, thumbs wiping away her tears. "Maybe love is madness. Maybe it's supposed to be terrifying and exhilarating and impossible. His voice cracked. All I know is that I was dead inside until you made me feel, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift if you let me. Nia stared into his eyes, those obsidian eyes that had haunted her dreams, and saw truth there. Painful, complicated, dangerous truth. She didn't know if she was making the right choice. Didn't know if this would destroy her or save her or both. But she knew she was tired of running from the one thing that made her feel complete. If I do this, she said slowly, if I choose you, we do it my way. No more games, no more tests, no more stalking or surprises or solving my problems behind my back. You want me as your equal? Then treat me like one. Anything, Ren breathed. And you have to promise me something. What? That you'll try to be better. Not perfect. Not some reformed saint. Just better than the man who humiliated me for 6 weeks. Better than the man who breaks into apartments and follows people home. Her voice softened. Be the man who kneeled in the snow and asked me to teach him how to be human again. Ren's expression shattered into something so vulnerable it made her chest ache. I promise. I'll try every day, for the rest of my life, to be the man you deserve. I don't need perfect, Ren. I just need honest. Then honestly? He pulled her closer, until there was no space left between them. I'm terrified. I have no idea how to do this. I'll probably mess it up spectacularly, but I want to try. With you. Only you. Nia's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him down until their lips were a breath apart. Then we'll figure it out together. When they kissed, it felt like falling and flying simultaneously, dangerous and exhilarating and exactly right. December came to Chicago with a vengeance. The blizzard started on a Tuesday evening, the kind of storm that shut down highways and turned the city into a ghost town. Snow fell in sheets, wind howling between buildings, the entire world reduced to white noise and cold. Nia stood in the Ren, not as an employee anymore, but as someone saying goodbye. She'd come to collect her final paycheck, to box up the few personal items she'd left in her locker, to close this chapter of her life. Her bags were already packed at home. She'd made the decision a week ago. Leave Chicago, start over somewhere Ren's shadow couldn't reach. Maybe Atlanta, back where she'd come from. Maybe somewhere new entirely. She hadn't told him yet. Couldn't bring herself to say the words that would end this before it really began. But staying felt impossible. Every day brought new complications. Threats from Ren's enemies, judgment from people who saw her as either a gold digger or a victim, the suffocating weight of being the one soft spot in a hardened criminal's armor. She loved him. God help her, she loved him. But love wasn't always enough. Nia locked the restaurant's front door for the last time. David had given her the honor, a small gesture of apology, and stepped out into the blizzard. The snow was already ankle-deep, the streets empty except for the occasional car crawling past, headlights barely penetrating the white curtain. The wind cut through her coat like knives, stealing her breath. She made it 3 steps before she saw him. Ren Takahiro stood beneath the streetlight across from the Ren, his long black coat dusted white with snow, his dark hair plastered to his face. He looked like something out of a dream, or a nightmare. Beautiful and dangerous and utterly alone. How long have you been standing there? Nia called over the wind. Long enough to realize you're leaving. Her breath caught. How did you? I know you, Nia. He crossed the street slowly, each step deliberate against the wind. I know the look in your eyes when you're saying goodbye. He stopped a few feet away, close enough to be heard, but far enough to give her space. I came to change your mind. You can't. I know. Snowflakes caught in his eyelashes, melting on his cheeks. But I had to try. They stared at each other while the storm raged around them, 2 people caught between staying and leaving, between safety and desire. Every Thursday, Ren said finally, his voice barely audible over the wind. I came to the Ren to control everything. My business, my empire, my emotions. I sat at that table and reminded myself that I was untouchable, unreachable, incapable of weakness. He took a step closer. Then you spoke, and I lost control of everything that mattered. Ren, I tried to scare you, to break you, to make you bow so I could prove to myself that you were like everyone else. Another step. But you weren't. You aren't. You looked at the monster and saw the man, and it terrified me more than any bullet or blade ever could. Tears froze on Nia's cheeks as they fell. I can't do this. Your world is too dangerous, too. I know. He was close now. Close enough to touch. I know what I'm asking is unfair. That you shouldn't have to risk everything for a man who's done terrible things. That you deserve better than a life lived in shadows. His voice broke. But I'm asking anyway. Then, to her complete shock, Ren Takahiro dropped to one knee in the snow. What are you doing? Nia whispered. From his coat pocket, he pulled a small velvet box. His hands shook as he opened it, revealing a simple silver band. No diamonds, no ostentation, just elegant simplicity. I can destroy men, he said, looking up at her with eyes full of desperate hope. I can dismantle empires with a phone call. I can make entire families vanish before sunrise. But I can't destroy this. He gestured between them. What is this? She breathed. You. His voice was raw. You're the one thing I can't control, can't dominate, can't survive without. And I'm done trying. Snow fell between them. The world narrowed to just this moment. The Mafia king kneeling before the waitress who'd taught him how to feel. Don't be my possession, Ren said. Be my equal. Be my conscience. Be the reason I stay human when every instinct tells me to be a monster. Be the woman who had the courage to tell me I tasted like disrespect, and stay brave enough to tell me when I'm wrong. Be my partner, my home. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Be mine, and let me be yours. Nia's hands covered her mouth, tears streaming freely now. You terrify me, then we're even. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Because you terrify me too. You make me want to be better, and that's the most frightening thing I've ever felt. She looked down at him. This impossible man who'd broken her world apart and was now offering to rebuild it into something entirely new. This man who'd humiliated her and stalked her and somehow, impossibly, made her fall in love with him. If I say yes, Nia said slowly, everything changes. No more games, no more secrets. You don't get to make decisions for me. You don't get to protect me by keeping me in the dark, and you definitely don't get to scare away everyone I care about. Agreed. And we do this legitimately. I won't be the girlfriend of a crime lord. If we're building something together, we're building something legal, something clean. Ren's jaw tightened, but he nodded. It'll take time. Years, maybe. But I'll do it. For you, I'll walk away from everything I built. Not for me, Nia corrected. For us. For the life we could have if you let yourself have it. She held out her hand. Stand up, Ren. I don't need you on your knees. I need you beside me. He stood, snow cascading off his coat, and slipped the ring onto her finger with shaking hands. It fit perfectly. Of course it did. He'd probably had her finger sized weeks ago through some invasive but oddly thoughtful means. I don't know how to do this, he admitted. How to be someone's partner instead of their king. Then we'll figure it out together. Nia pulled him close, her arms wrapping around his neck. But fair warning, I'm going to be terrible at playing Mafia girlfriend. I'll probably embarrass you at fancy events and tell your associates exactly what I think of them. Good. His arms circled her waist, holding her like she might disappear if he loosened his grip. I don't want you to change. I fell in love with a woman who had the courage to defy me. Stay that woman forever. You love me? Devastatingly, he whispered against her hair. Completely, dangerously, in every way a man can love a woman who's become his entire world. Nia pulled back just enough to see his face, to see the truth shining in those obsidian eyes that had haunted her since the first Thursday. Then show me, she said. Show me every day that choosing you was the right choice. Show me that the man I fell in love with is stronger than the monster you used to be. Show me that love can exist even in the darkness. Every day, Ren promised, for the rest of our lives. When they kissed, the blizzard seemed to pause, the wind dying to a whisper, the snow falling gentler, the whole world holding its breath for two impossible people finding their way to each other. They stood there as the storm raged back to life around them, the waitress and the Mafia king, holding onto each other like anchors in the chaos. Her bags could stay packed. Chicago could remain dangerous. His world could still be full of shadows and violence. But they'd face it together. Equals. Partners. Two people who'd found something worth fighting for in the last place either expected. As they finally walked toward Ren's waiting car, hand in hand, Nia looked back at the Ren one last time. The restaurant where she'd been humiliated and defiant, where she'd found her courage and lost her peace, where she'd met a monster and discovered a man. No regrets? Ren asked quietly, following her gaze. Nia squeezed his hand, the silver ring catching the streetlight, and smiled. Only one. What's that? That I didn't tell you your food tasted like disrespect sooner. His laugh, genuine and warm and so achingly human, echoed through the snowy Chicago night, and Nia knew she'd made the right choice, not because it was safe, not because it was easy, but because some love stories aren't about riding off into the sunset. They're about choosing to stand in the storm together and daring the world to tear you apart. And Nia Caldwell had never been one to back down from a dare.